Alrighty. So first of all, like I said, I will go into depth into each developmental age and the common responses. And I think a common theme, there will be a lot of common themes that you see that apply to different ages, to all of them. But a big one is the importance of being honest with your child. Honesty really helps build trust with your child, and it helps build the foundation for any other future important big conversations. Next slide, please. So first, I would like to share some basic information on how you can discuss death with your child. First of all, you always want to follow your child's lead and answer any questions that he or she might have. Sometimes when you talk about death with your child, initially that child may have all these questions and some of them might be repetitive, and that's fine. That's a cue that your child is definitely ready to talk about this. Sometimes your child has no questions at all, and that's okay too. That just might mean that they're not ready to talk about the death at the current moment, but this is a conversation that they will certainly not forget, and they will come back to you once they're ready. Another common one that we see at Jacob's Heart is that a little one might come and they might have one question and you answer it to the best of your ability, and then they just run off and play, and that's okay too. That means they're ready to receive the information, but they're not ready to receive the whole set of information, or they need time to process, and they'll come back to you with more questions. It's also recommended for you to choose a familiar and safe environment to have this important conversation with your child. It is also very recommended for you to have this conversation with your child during the daytime, not before bedtime, because the child does need time to process this information, whether that be playtime right after the conversation, or teens might just need time to conversate with you more about this. And if you do this at night, there's an increased risk for the child to ruminate about the information they were just given, and it might disrupt their sleep. So this is a big one in my personal experience, to deliver the information with enough time for the child to do something after. Also remember to be gentle and honest with your child, but also with yourself. This is a big conversation to have. And also use simple terms that your child could understand, something very clear and concise. And I'll get more into depth with this part of it in the next slide. So using words, clear and concise for words, what I mean is using words like death, die, and dying. We don't want to use abstract words such as they're sleeping, or they went away, or they've departed, just because this could create confusion on the little ones. It could create the thought of, will I wake up if I go to sleep, or will my mom wake up after she goes to sleep? We've also had scenarios where children they remember this conversation, and then they relate it to a family member going on vacation, and they say, if they're going away on vacation, will they be back? So it could create some confusion. So I really do recommend going with more clear and concise words. Especially if you're talking about the death of a child, maybe a child in the family passed away, or a friend, it's important to remember your child that although death is natural and it's universal and it happens, it is uncommon for a child to die. Another thing that we really recommend is to allow your child to express their feelings in whatever way necessary. A lot of times this looks in ways such as acting out, withdrawing, throwing temper tantrums. And as a parent, this could be, especially if you're going through grief yourself, or you're maybe a teacher or a mentor or someone that's there for the child, it could be a bit, it could raise some maybe frustration, but just remember that this is normal for temper tantrums, withdrawing, acting out, for that to happen. That is just a way for a child to cope with grief. I would also encourage time with peers. Let the child know that it's still okay to have fun. Despite the death, they might feel this guilt of, no, I cannot go out and have fun, or no, I cannot be with my friends at times. So just reminding them that it's okay to still have time with their peers and still have time, playtime. We also recommend to provide a lot of opportunities for creative expression. So that can be through art. Art is very therapeutic, for children to cope with big feelings, and such as death and grief. So there's a lot of studies on that. So art is a big one that I support. So even like playing with slime or having Play-Doh on hand, those things can be very helpful. Also big energy stuff like dancing. Also helping keeping the memory of the loved one or friend alive through legacy building or making memory boxes or things as such. And I'll go more into death in future slides. So now I can go into each age group and what are some common responses that you might see. So first I'll start with 2 to 4-year-olds. In this developmental stage, the little ones, they don't really understand the permanence of death. They might see it as something that's reversible. They might not even comprehend that this is something universal that happens to everyone. During this age, it's important for children to have a lot of playtime. This is actually a way that they express themselves. Some common responses are crying, anxiety, irritability. They might be extra clingy. A lot of repetitive questions at this age, and also 5 to 8. Temper tantrums. And a lot of the common ones also include sharing the news of the death with relatives that come to your home. They might just randomly share the news, even to strangers at the grocery stores. So this is a common response. Ways to help is to just create a consistency. Consistency and routines are very important in children's lives. So just maintaining these consistent routines in your life will help the child cope. Providing short and honest answers at this age is very important. Maybe providing long answers with complex language will just be more confusing. So just honest, short answers will do. Setting rules, but being flexible, that's very helpful too. Providing a lot of opportunities for playtime. Providing choices such as, would you like cheese and crackers for snack time or apples and grapes? So just providing choices helps a child feel in control of things in life still. And demonstrate a lot of emotional support in whatever way your family does that, whether that be hugging, kisses, playing, just continuing that continuous support can be very helpful. Now we'll do ages 5 to 8 and their common responses to grief. So children who are 5 to 8 they do a lot of exploring with their independence. So they're starting to do things on their own, a lot of tasks. They're concrete thinkers, which means that they have a more literal way of thinking of the world, but they also do a lot of fantasy and magic play, and that's another way to perceive the world as well for them. Common responses to grief during this age are changing eating habits, disturbed sleep, nightmares are very common. Their development might regress. So if a child has started showering on their own, they might stop that and they might go back to wanting to shower with mom or dad. And that's okay too. So as a parent, just being patient with that, or as a mentor, counselor, just reminding a parent that this might happen and it's normal, and just being patient. They might also complain of stomach pains or headaches, and this is also normal. It's usually due to anxiety or nervousness. Ways that we can help is, like I said, honesty is a very common theme. Also the clear language, being patient with any repetitive questions, because that will happen. Offer many opportunities for big energy play. So this is like being outdoors, going to the park, dancing. Even if you have the chance to offer extracurricular activities such as dance or karate, these also, there's a lot of studies that support that these big activities where you release a lot of energy are very healthy in helping a child cope with big emotions. And ages 9 through 12. So children who are 9 to 12 are still concrete thinkers, but they're also developing their way to think abstractly. Children who are this age are starting to form strong connections with their friends, and this is important because we want to encourage then peer time. If friends are the people that will help them cope with their grief, or safe people, then just remembering that that's an option too. So at this age, they're also beginning to understand the concept of death more. They know that it's a permanent thing and a universal thing. It's natural. They may also start thinking about how the death of their loved one will affect their own lives in the long run. They tend to be more curious about what happens to the loved one's body after they've died. Some common responses are emotional outbursts, anxiety, concerns about their own safety, nightmares, difficulty focusing, the stomach and headaches and body pains related to anxiety or nervousness. They might express their feelings through play. They might be asking more detailed questions versus the younger children. There's also a lot of feelings of sadness, anger, guilt, worried, and sometimes even relief, especially if it's related to the death of a loved one who was suffering, or it just really changes the family dynamics. And so once the loved one dies, it is normal for some of these kids to feel some sort of relief. There's also increased sensitivity to the surrounding environment. So maybe being more sensitive to noise or light, that's very normal too, and withdrawing as well. Some of the things that we can do to help are to answer questions honestly and concise, provide opportunities for expressive activities such as art, help the child identify family members or mentors, counselors, friends who they feel safe with, because sometimes if the parent or the person helping is grieving too, it might be hard for ourselves to be able to be there. So if we have a backup and identify someone who is safe for the child to express their feelings, that's very important to have set in advance. Maintaining routines is very, very important at this age as well. Keeping your rules and modeling safe way to express your feelings and self-care is very important as well. Being an active listener if the child is sharing what their experience is like with you, then just be sure to be an active listener. It's also important, I think, to inform teachers of what happened, of the loss in the family, or if you're anticipating grief, it's also something that's important to share with teachers, because children do spend most of their time at school as well. And this way also teachers can be mindful if the child is withdrawing or if they're having a hard time concentrating. Letting the teachers know will help teachers be more flexible and understanding. And if the child is exhibiting any self-harm symptoms, it is important to seek immediate professional help. Now for the teen age group, teens, wow, they can really think abstractly and they could really grasp onto many concepts. They can consider concepts such as death as something beyond what we can observe physically. Teens are forming their identity at this age and their priorities are changing. They might teens are certainly more attracted to their peers and spending time with them than with family, commonly. Um, this is also a time when they really want to express themselves and not feel judged. So a death can be very difficult just for teens, especially because of their ability to think abstractly and beyond. It is very common for them to want to withdraw from family members and reach out to peers instead. It is a period where they are at an increased risk for risky behaviors such as drug and alcohol use or reckless driving. Sometimes teens have a difficulty focusing, concentrating, or they do the exact opposite. They push themselves to reach this sense of perfection. They might have this hard time sleeping. They might be resorting to food as a way to cope, so overeating, or the exact opposite, where there's a lack of appetite. Intense emotional reactions such as anger, sadness, anxiety, even laughing, like nervous laughter in inappropriate times can be normal. They might feel uncomfortable speaking to a family member about death, especially if the family member themselves are grieving. So it might be that they just don't want to share because they don't want to make their family member sad. There's also often a confusion about role identity in the family, especially if, let's say, dad passed away, the son might feel like now they need to be the man of the house. Or sometimes they feel like they need to be stronger caregivers for their siblings. Ways that we could help is reassuring the teen's safety, even if this is not a concern, maintaining routines, clear expectations of the teens, but offering that flexibility as needed. Allowing the teens to express themselves, and being an active listener without having the need to fix the teen or to offer advice or judge or try to minimize the teen's feelings is very important. A lot of times just listening to the teen really helps them, and maybe even reiterating what they just said to you, repeating it, helps them know that you're listening and that you understand them. Again, with teens, being very honest always helps, offering choices so that they have a sense of control, offering opportunities for them to be with their peers, looking for support groups for teens, um, maybe a school counselor, mentor, or coach that could be there for them, modeling, expressing your own emotions, and self-care. Asking open-ended questions like, what is this like for you? And of course, we always say seek for immediate professional help if there's any concerns around self-harm or suicidal ideation. So with teens, some key things that we like to advise is that sometimes as a parent or an adult in a teen's life, we have this immediate urge to really fix everything and make it right, make the teen feel better right away, and have the answers to everything. But I think it's important to remind ourselves that it's okay to not have the answers to everything, and it's okay to to just let the conversation happen. There's nothing really to fix, but there's so much to try to understand and support the teen with. So as a parent, be gentle with yourself. As a mentor or adult in that supporting a teenager, just remember to be gentle with yourself. Maybe a teen might have a really complex question that you don't have the answer to, and it's okay to tell them, I don't have the answer now, but I'm going to try to get you that answer. Sometimes teens do withdraw and they feel more comfortable with friends, but please don't let this keep you from always checking up on them, continuing to show that you're there for them, and holding that space for them to process their feelings. I wanted to include siblings here because a sibling's grief is often misunderstood. So when a sibling loses their sister or brother, it's usually, the grief is very different. They usually experience something called double grief, which means that they're grieving the loss of their brother or sister, but they're also grieving the relationship change. So their previous relationship with their parents or their other siblings. Oftentimes siblings are called the forgotten siblings. And just remembering that when a child loses their brother or sister, they also lose their innocence. And this can create often a lot of fear and anxiety and even survivor's guilt. So some children have this feeling of, why wasn't it I that died? Why was it my brother or sister? Um, and this is a very, very common occurrence. And it's something that they really think about over and over again. And so getting help, counseling can really help um, siblings with their grief. As a parent or mentor that's there for a sibling, we always recommend checking in routinely and asking how they're doing that day. Every day is different. Letting them know that if they don't want to share, finding them someone that they could share with, or if they just want to keep to themselves and be private at the given moment, just don't give up on asking every day how they're doing. We also do recommend it slowly introducing things that can help a sibling remember their sibling. So like rituals such as candle lightings for holidays or birthdays, or sharing memories of the siblings, creating a memory box, a special outing once a year, like a ritual that you would do, such as releasing butterflies, or something special that can tie into the lost sibling. Siblings, it's important that they find a safe person to share their grief with, because everyone in the family is grieving the loss of a child. So parents are grieving the loss of their son or daughter, the other siblings are grieving the loss of their brother and sister. So a lot of times siblings actually don't want to talk to their parents or to their other siblings in fear of making them sad or provoking feelings. So I really encourage to identify a safe person that they can build a relationship with. And as a mentor parent, encourage this relationship. And this could be a therapist, a mentor, a teacher, a coach, or an extended family member. I also wanted to include in these slides some resources. So these are just some links and videos for teens. The next slide, I believe, is our books. So these are for different age groups, including books for teens. We have all of these at Jacob's Heart. So if you ever want to give them a look, please feel free to visit Jacob's Heart, and we're more than happy to have you read this book, take it home, borrow it. But if you want to purchase it too, these are the authors and the titles. And we also wanted to provide some organizations that you can visit. So that's the next slide. These are some organizations that you can visit. Some of them are far away, like the Dougie Center. I know they have different branches everywhere, but their website is so helpful. As a matter of fact, it's something that I used heavily for these slides. They have a lot of information I recommended. Jacob's Heart, Hospice Giving Foundation, Coastal Kids, Courageous Parents Network, great one for parents. They're all great. I really encourage everyone to visit these. And these are my references. Does anyone have any questions?
There was a question in the chat.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you, Lori.
Perhaps this is covered in the conversation later. Okay, do we have resources, instructions, tips, or how to talk to a child with a fatal illness about their impending death? Yes, there are many resources on how to talk to a child about a fatal illness. I would say the Dougie Center is a really, really great one. I am happy if you can directly email me. I can provide many other resources, and we can go into depth about how to proceed with this. Any suggestions on talking with teens on death of their own parent? Yes, of course. So again, with teens, their ability to think abstractly is amazing. So these topics are relatively, in a sense, I don't want to diminish the smaller kiddos, but more difficult because they have all these really important and detailed questions. So I would always just recommend, if the teen is open to talking to you, going and finding a space that is safe, a space that is good and private for the both of you to talk, listening to your teen about any questions that they have after you talk to them. So if you're talking to them about their own parents' death, just being very honest about this and saying what the situation is, if it's an illness or what is causing this, making sure that you explain, what is causing the death, that you are there for the teen, that um, answering any questions that they might have, if they have any things that they would like to do before their parent dies. The importance of legacy building, that way they have something to remember their parent by, something that they could even do before with their parent before they pass away. Legacy building is a huge one for people who are anticipating grief, especially if their child, if the parent is still alive and the child can still have that relationship before they pass. Also, identifying resources that can help the child with the anticipating the grief and even after the parent dies, like a support group is very, very helpful.
Thank you, Daniela. You have two more questions. Do you have suggestions for resources for children, teens whom experience lost death through a traumatic injury event? I think it's very similar to what you just mentioned, but I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I think it's very, very similar, like you said. With a traumatic death, I think the support of a counselor is always very nice too. So if you do have, I would love to send you some resources. Is this a question from Deb Keller? Okay, Deb, if you could provide your email, I'm happy to email over some helpful resources.
And what is your suggestion in helping a parent who does not want to tell their child, 5-year-old, that her father died?
If you are not ready to tell your child that their father died, but you are seeking ways to tell them, I would suggest starting to explore the ways in which you could possibly tell them, like thinking about where you would tell them about the news, what kind of words you would use, what are the possible responses that they may have, and what you could offer to go ahead and help with this. But you would have to be ready to have this conversation. So I think if you're not ready, but you want to be ready, finding a safe person for yourself to talk about this, maybe a professional such as a counselor that could help you prepare on how to have this conversation with your child. Definitely setting a game plan though, for this difficult conversation on what words you would use, how your child would respond possibly, and what resources you could offer for your child. And also, these are very difficult conversations, and being gentle with yourself and letting your child know this is going to be hard. I might have an emotional response to it. This might make mommy sad, might make mommy cry, but that's okay. And we are going to get through this. And these are things that we're going to do to help us feel better.
Excellent, Daniela. Any more questions for Daniela? Oh, there's one coming up. Oh, I kind of lost it. It's jumping. Okay, Daniela, I would like some support group resources for teens, either virtually or in person in the Salinas community. There's an email for you, Daniela. And Julia, Hannah, thank you so much, Daniela, for this presentation. You might have mentioned this already, but will you be able to share the slides? I will be sharing the slides, so if you register and you in that registration form, you put your email, I'll be sending all the slides and resources that Daniela will be sharing with me and also the rest of the presenters. So, so yes, I'll be sending all the materials.
Yes, and Anna, I took a picture of your email and I will send a support group specific for teens.
Another question, your thoughts about children attending a funeral?
I think it's up to the parent whether they want their child to attend a funeral or not, because every child is very unique. And so it's really up to the parent whether they want their child to attend a funeral. If the child does attend a funeral, I think being prepared as a parent as to the questions your child might have, depending on their age, the child might say, are they sleeping? Or why are they in that coffin? Or why is everyone crying? Just being prepared to have answers for these questions. I really don't think it's bad to have a child attend a funeral, but I also really respect parents who choose to keep their children at home with a safe family or friend.
Thank you, Daniela. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to continue our presentation. And our next presenter, thank you, Daniela. If you have more questions for Daniela, please put them in the chat and I'll make sure I'll send them to her. Or if we have time at the end, we can go back to those questions. So now we have Lori Van Meter. She's a memorial arts specialist, and she's going to be sharing with us an idea that you can put in practice at home or in schools to help the grieving children. Lori, thank you and welcome.
Hi, thank you very much for having me. I'm very glad to be here. My name is Lori Van Meter and my organization is Arting Ways. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about working with clay, a little bit about myself and how I got here and why I chose this and what you can expect from it. And then I'll talk to you about some options that you have for different age groups or different outcomes, different things you're looking to get out of it. So I'm an artist, and I have been for probably most of my life. And I'm also a widow. And when my husband died in 2006, it was natural for me to use all the materials and tools and skills that I have to memorialize him, to make things that made me feel better, to make gifts for my friends. And I knew a glass blower who could blow a vessel for his ashes. I knew welders. So I used that to get me through it and to memorialize him to other people. And at some point I started helping other people do this for their friends and family that they had lost. And in 2014, I formalized Arting Ways so that I could help strangers in the whole world who wanted to come and make art that helped them to get through this, to memorialize someone, to create a legacy, to remember the parts of them that you want to remember. So I give workshops, I do commissions, I do art installations for Day of the Dead and other different remembrance ceremonies. I give lectures and essays on the history of this. Basically, all of my work is about how man observes the death of his fellow man. And I use man as a species here, not as a gender concept. When we lose someone, since we were Neanderthals, how do we react to that? What do we do? And how does that make us different from any other animals? So I want to talk to you first. I have some slides to show you, but I just want to talk to you straight first about why I chose this. I think that working with clay, we'll talk about the different kinds of clays too, is helpful for a lot of reasons. For one thing, it's familiar to almost everybody at any age, in any form. It's one of the first materials that we learn to play with. So it's very accessible. That's really important to me, is that it be something that anybody is familiar with and doesn't have to think about what this is. And also the benefits that I'm going to talk about are also applicable to all ages, not only your children, but to you, to adults and to their kids' grandparents. This is something that I think that the whole family can benefit from, especially if you're doing this together. So the second benefit I think that is really important is that when you're working with clay, you're physically moving something with your hands and you are shaping it, you are in control of it. There is a cathartic emotional release that happens from slamming something and squeezing it and twisting it and stretching it and making it your thing. There is a lot of power there. There's also a lot of aggression that you can get out, and you can really just throw yourself into it, literally. And then on the other side, you can roll it into a ball and you can flatten it and you can smooth it and all these things that have a calming effect. And you're seeing that calming effect not only in your body, but on the thing you're working on. So it's reinforcing, it's a feedback loop that and it gets smoother and it gets smoother and it pleases your eyes. So, and the other thing is, they talk about the phrase throwing clay actually refers to spinning it on a wheel and making like a pot or a vase. But I tell you, throwing clay is a very healthy exercise. It doesn't break. For one thing, if you ever really wanted to throw something, but you are sensible and you don't want to break anything, clay doesn't break. And it's soft, so it's probably not going to break something that it hits, although I would stay away from throwing it at windows or living things. But, slamming a piece of clay on the ground a few times in a row is really not going to hurt anybody. It may just give you the release that you needed to go finish a conversation that was difficult. So just the material itself is really, I think, really helpful just to have. And then when you're working with clay, another thing about the tactile stimulation that you're getting is that human bonds are based on this chemical soup that goes through our bodies when we interact with people, and particularly when we touch people or when we touch things. We have a response that is very much around the chemical called oxytocin. And this is parent and child bonding. This is romantic bonding. This is you and your buddy. That pat on the back, there's a reason that we find that so comforting. Whether it's a hug or a kiss, or, so much as putting your hand on someone's arm when you laugh together, this is touch that reinforces, that physically reinforces the bond that you're building. And so when you lose someone, you are losing a chemical, you are withdrawing from a drug that is responsible for the continuance of our species. It's a very powerful chemical. So when you withdraw from the touch of a relationship, you can suffer symptoms that actually feel like a withdrawal, like an addiction withdrawal. So when you can replace some of those, some of that tactile stimulation, you can work with play, you can actually replicate some of those chemicals, some of the chemical soup that produces the pleasure, the endorphins and dopamine, and actually oxytocin that give you that pleasing, that comforting and comforted feeling. So there's an actual physical thing that's happening in your body when you're working with something like clay. And then the other thing that I think is really important about this kind of activity is that there is no specific vocabulary or skills involved. Sometimes kids don't want to talk about things because they're frustrated that they don't have the words. Even adults who have, a master's degree in writing, they have trouble coming up with the words to talk about it sufficiently. And the fact that you don't have the words makes it frustrating. And then you think it's the talking that's frustrating. So kids might avoid talking. And I think, Daniela, you were kind of getting at that they may come and say something and then run away. They have only enough room for certain information. So this is something that they don't have to talk about, and you don't have to instruct them on it. If you give a kid a piece of clay, he will start squeezing it and banging it and rubbing it and getting it under his fingernails. Quiet focus is really healthy during creative pursuits. So you don't have to talk. It's okay. You're going to get a lot out of this by just being with each other. It allows you time to think, and then to play out what you're thinking, and then assess results of that. And that's that kind of trial and error of sort of free play. With something like clay, you can make something, squish it, and make it again, or make something different. And if you're not sure what to do with your kids, you can mimic their approach. They will, like I said, they will get in there and start playing. And if the kid wants to slam out a flat pancake of clay, try slamming out a flat pancake with them. And if your kid's not sure what to do next, maybe you can lead a little bit and you can roll it into a ball or squeeze it between your fingers or laugh at how it's stuck under your nails or got a piece on your nose. Go back and forth, let your child lead some of this activity, and you can lead some activity when you think that they're reaching a fork in the road and they don't know what to do. And then the other thing that I think is a great way to use this activity is to try to you can build something together. You can put a blob on the table. You could build a scene. It could be a landscape that has, here's some trees and I'm putting flowers, and then here's a rhinoceros in the middle of it all, or a giant bunny. It could be a seascape where here's a fish and here's some kelp or a big shark that comes along. A portrait of somebody, trying to draw somebody, remembering their features, dad's funny curly hair, or that crooked nose that grandma had, the different features, you can represent that and you remember them physically like that. Or just abstract things, little balls and squiggles and flat spots. And you don't have to have any tools for this. You can use a kitchen knife and a stick from the yard. You can use a hair scrunchie, anything that you think of can move the material or make an indentation or a pattern in it. You can use anything. So what you're building is less important than kind of the thoughts that are in your mind, creating it, the ideas that you come up with. And there are a few, I think, so that's kind of why I chose this, why I think, the reasons that this is helpful. And I want to talk a little bit about outcomes, the results that you might be going for. There's the biophysical benefits that I talked about before, the tactile stimulation, the mood expression. If your child is not expressing anger because they think that's going to hurt somebody, watching them bang away at something lets you know that they have something that they really want to express that is of an aggressive nature, or an upsetting nature to them. I don't have the psychological vocabulary for that, I'm sorry. But there's also another thing that you might want to look for in this is the symbolism. What shapes and objects are they making? If they're making anything, if they're making something that's representative, is it an animal? Is it a person? Kids will also quite often go towards making a sort of anthropoid figure. It's got a head and arms and legs. So you might see symbolism in the things that they're making. And it might have a story. And if you ask, what is that ball of clay's story? Your kid will make up a story behind it. Even if it's just a ball of clay. And they will indicate what's going on in their mind by the elements they give to this story. Remember, kids aren't restricted by the idea of reality and what's possible. They will try things out. They're trying ideas out, and they will come up with an elephant that has big purple ears and wears Oxford brogue shoes. Kids will do that. So if you ask them, what's that piece of story? They'll lead you through that. And there may be metaphors in there. Why does the elephant have big purple ears and wear Oxford brogues? Well, my grandpa wore Oxford shoes. So that's why this elephant wears Oxford shoes. And so you may realize that this kid was noticing things about grandpa that you went, oh yeah, those were his favorite shoes. So, you can look for the symbolism and metaphors that they're presenting to you. Another objective or a kind of result that you can look for in this is you can make objects. You might want to make a key fob or a charm to put on a backpack or a necklace or a charm bracelet or something, an actual object, little charms and things. You can also do this for an occasion. If it's a birthday or an anniversary or a particular holiday coming up, you can make a holiday ornaments for the tree. You can make, or for a wreath or for a garland in your house. You can make little birthday things to represent how old somebody might have been. If your kids have lost a sibling, you're 15 now and you were 2 years apart. What would he look like at 13 instead of 8? You can bring these memories back and let a kid kind of flesh out the fact that they don't know, and they will always wonder that. Well, here's a way you can go through that when you wonder. You can make up the way he might look. Another thing that I think is a really great benefit of this that I think we read from this kind of activity is that besides the chemical soup, human bonds are also built on shared experiences. And as your family is going through the shared experience of loss, I think it's really important to to start looking for experiences of joy that you can build upon in the future. Because if all the memories you have are remember when that person was here and we did those things, you can lose track of the time that's happened since then. And so even while you're grieving and during the critical period that's early, or whether it's 10 years later, I think that it's really important to build experiences together that that person wasn't there for, that you can still rejoice in and that you got something from. So I'm going to show you some slides I pulled up. Slides that I made. Can everybody see those?
No, Lori, we can't see them.
Oh, okay. I forgot to share my screen. There we go. How about that?
Yeah.
Can you see now? Do you see them now? Oh, you do. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to go through this with a couple different, a bunch of different types of clay. Some of them you'll be familiar with, some of you may not, some of you may be afraid of, but you shouldn't be afraid of any of these. So let's start with Play-Doh, because everybody has heard of Play-Doh. Everybody knows what it is. All the way to, little kids can play with Play-Doh. I think the recommended age is two or over. So check on the packaging for any of this. Check with the manufacturer of the products to make sure that it's age appropriate for your kid. But the Play-Doh is great for tasters. You know, if they're still at that age where they're putting things in their mouth, or even when it comes to working with clay, when I was a kid, they were paste eaters. We were in school, we were way above that age when everything goes in your mouth. But if it had an interesting smell, a lot of kids will want to taste it. So Play-Doh is safe for that. It just tastes salty. I think it's relatively non-toxic. So it's great for kids who are at that age that you just want to let them be able to play with it kind of independently, doing their thing, and not want to have to babysit them on it or keep taking it away from them. Play-Doh is safe. It comes in a million colors. You can mix all the colors and make custom things, and it stays soft, so you can use it over and over again. But as you know, it will dry out and get hard. It's almost like Legos on the floor in the dark of night. Let's see, next slide. So air dry clay is maybe ages 4 and over. This also comes in a ton of colors. And once you've worked it, it gets a little dried out. I think you can keep it wet while you're working it, but then you can just air dry it and you can paint it. You can make a shape out of it. You can use it for all those abstract, squeezy, throwy, pinchy, rolly activities that you can use for any clay. But this will air dry. And then when it's done, you can spray paint or seal it with shellac. You can paint colors on it. There's lots of ways that you can use this to do all the different activities. And this is something that if you wanted to make memorial little mementos like charms or birthday gifts or ornaments or things like that, this is a really good option for that because these are very, very lightweight. Polymer clay is the next one I would suggest. It's for kids a little bit older, and I don't think it's toxic, but it's probably not good if you eat it. It comes in also a million colors. These are just 2 brands, Fimo and Sculpey. You can get all of these, by the way, at any craft store. If you prefer to shop online, you can get them on Amazon or any place like that. When you make stuff with this polymer clay, it stays nice and soft while you work in it. And with like most clays, other than the air dry clays, the more you work with them, the softer and smoother they get. So when you're working with this stuff, you can make a thing and squish it and put it back in a plastic bag and it'll stay soft for next time. You can mix these colors, blend the colors together, but you can also bake this in your home oven so that it's hard. So if you wanted to make something that's permanent, you can make what you want and then bake it in the oven. You don't need a kiln, just bake it in your oven. And you can also paint it. You can glue things to it. You can seal it and shellac it. You can put like little rhinestones or tchotchkes or ribbons or hair, whatever on it. So modeling clay is usually called plastilina, spelled a couple different ways, depending if it's from Italy or America. It only comes in a few colors. And I want to mention the benefit of this clay and the next clay. They don't come in a lot of colors. And there is something to be said for neutrality. For one thing, there is an enormous segment of the population that doesn't see in full color, whether you want to call it colorblind or color deficient. a lot of people don't fully enjoy all the benefits of a million colors in a palette because they're only seeing a few of them, and a lot of them are just shades of gray. So if you really want to be everybody to be kind of playing on a level field and really seeing all the metaphors and symbolisms that they might be making, you might want to take color out of the equation. It's also one less thing that you have to think about. So if you really want to simplify this activity into something that's really kind of pure and clean, take the color out of it. And then it's just more about the shapes. I don't know if you've noticed, like I do, when you look at black and white photography, you see so much more texture and some of the different lighting that that is used. I think that's the benefit of lack of color. And when modeling clay stays soft, it doesn't harden. But I have sculptures that I've made that I've had sitting around for 15 or 20 years that even when the house gets hot, they don't melt, they just stay where they are. So you can reuse them or you can keep them for a very long time, just soft and reuse the clay. And this is probably familiar to everybody. This is ceramic clay. This is what your pots are made of, and your little terracotta and different ceramic bowls. So it comes in quite a few shades, but they're all going to be neutrals. And again, the same benefit with that is that you're not having to complicate your brain with the color choices. It dries at room temperature, but at that stage, you could re-wet it and mush it back down again. Or if you can keep it dry, it'll keep its form. You can then take it and have it fired in a kiln if you know somebody who has a kiln. Or sometimes you can, if you buy the clay from a certain place, they will fire it for you because they know what's in the kiln and it's not going to blow up on them. And then after it's fired, it can be painted, it can be glazed. You can even do that on unfired clay, although it gets a bit messy. And again, this is something that's just so familiar to everybody. And whether you use it and reuse it, or whether you make something permanent out of it, you can still reap all those benefits of having the memorial and the memento, different things. And then of course, on the internet, there are 100 million ways to make homemade clay. And there's recipes out there for all different types of clay, for Play-Doh type clay, for that kind of salt bread dough clay that people used to make. You can dye them in any colors because you're going to probably use food colorings, food dyes. And you can actually make modeling clay. Basically, modeling clay is minerals and oil, where ceramic clay is minerals and water. So that's why modeling clay doesn't dry out. And if you put it in the oven, it just goes flat. So that's just the difference between ceramic clay and modeling clay. And you can replicate both of those pretty easily. And then I think that you can get these benefits with anything that is clay-like. If you take a roll of toilet paper and put it in a bowl of water, it becomes this great paper mache, mushy clay type of compound. And if you drain it a little bit, there you go, you're done. And most houses have that at hand. Sheetrock, joint compound for sheetrock. A lot of garages, you got a bucket of this in the garage. A lot of people have it. It's just pretty much very soft clay. So it's minerals and water and some plasticizers. So mud, good old fashioned dirt and water. When you dry it out a little bit, it becomes just like clay. That's minerals and water. It's all it is. And, look around your house and get creative, have some fun and be a little bit irreverent. That, so what if it's food? A banana will mush between your fingers. You can smash it, you can stack it, you can probably get it to mold to a shape. So my point is just let yourself enjoy the activity, the feeling, and think about those different benefits, the tactile association, the doing things together, the different ways the materials can mix, and use those regardless of what it is you're doing it with, whatever your material is. And if you want to find recipes and instructions and ideas for different things you could make, and context for this, if you want to know a little bit more about clay and how you make clay and what kind of mud makes the best clay, your local public library is going to have all that information. I love going to the library for things. I think that sitting with a book full of the information is a whole lot different than scrolling down a screen for it. So that's my advice. Check out the library and see what else they have for you. And then, here's my challenge, is to make something of it. When something big enters your life like this, make something of it. turn to what you can create when something has been destroyed or taken away. And I thank you very much for being here, and I hope you have fun with going home and with this activity.
Thank you, Lori. I'm glad you mentioned public libraries, because now we have, let me try to share my screen once you're done, Lori.
Yeah, I can stop sharing now. I think I stop sharing. How do I stop sharing?
There's a button on top of your screen that says stop, and I believe it should be
Oh,
red.
stop share. There it is. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, there you go. So now we have resources for you. I know we're going over the time that we said we were gonna finish this workshop, so I apologize for that. So Peggy, the floor is yours. Share with us your resources, please.
Well, I'm going to keep it really short because our time is up, but the Monterey Public Library several months ago got a grant to provide backpack kits for parents that were interested in sharing more about social emotional learning. And we happen to have one by that deals with grief. I wanted to thank Daniela and Lori for the great information. Kids always learn best if you include something tactile, auditory, kinesthetic, and visual. And sharing a book almost, I mean, it's a bibliotherapy of sorts. And when you share a book, especially about grief, it provides words for you to be able to share with your child. And that is something that is pretty obvious by the way that these backpack kits have flown out the door. We cannot keep them in the library. Each one has its own theme. And like I said, we have one on grief as well. It's just so critical for us to connect with kids with any emotion. So I'm just going to stop right there and just say, if you want to look on our catalog, just type in SEL kits and they'll be listed there. Each one has 6 books and usually a game of some sort that would involve sharing words and emotions with your kids, which I think is pretty valuable. So the kit has also an insert that has different resources available for the parents to look into. And of course, that's all within Monterey County, and of course online places that would help them with anything that they have going on with their family. But thank you for letting me share. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Peggy. So additional resources, and again, I'm going to be sharing the slides with all of you via email. We have professional help, the number and a website to visit. Also, the Heal Together Hub. It's a central source of information and community resources in Monterey County to respond to grief, loss, and anxiety. They have a lot of activities for every age, person, and preference. So reach out to them and they can guide you. Also, the Hospice of Santa Cruz County has a Camp Erin, June 4th and 5th. This is a 2-day camp for bereavement day camp for youth who are grieving the death of a significant person in their lives, and camper ages 7 to 17. And the information is right there in the slide. So if you need additional resources, you can always contact Hospice Giving Foundation, and there's our website. And also we provide workshops related to death and dying and healthcare preparedness. So feel free to reach out. And speaking of workshops, our next workshop is how to have the conversation that none of us want to have. And this is going to be a virtual presentation with Sherry Farr and Connie Riley. It's an hour presentation. Again, you can go to our website and register to get the Zoom link. And hopefully soon we'll be doing more in-person presentations. So thank you so much for staying with us. I know we went over our time, so I really appreciate the time that you're sharing with all of us. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Peggy. And thank you, Daniela. And let us know if we can help you in any other way. Thank you.
Thank you.